A boot slammed into a cardboard box and sent it sliding across wet pavement. A young woman scrambled after it on her hands and knees. Her last clean shirt was in that box. Her last $12 too. A man in a long coat stood over her, laughing. She didn't look up. She didn't cry. She grabbed the box, stood, and walked into the rain. That night she slept under the awning of a hardware store. The next morning she had $5 in her pocket and a flyer in her hand. The flyer said 3 words. Old cabin. $5. Her name was Hannah Reeves. And the rotting little building on that flyer was about to silence every person who ever laughed at her. What did a homeless 20-year-old find hidden inside a $5 cabin that everyone else passed by? Stay with me on this one. Hannah Reeves was 20 years old and 3 weeks out of an apartment she had never been able to afford in the first place. Her mother had died 9 months earlier. Her stepfather had taken the apartment, the car, the savings, and her mother's wedding ring. Then he had taken the front door key out of her hand and closed it in her face. She hadn't cried then either. That was something her mother had taught her, in a quiet voice, in the last year of her life. Crying changes nothing, baby. Save your breath for moving. She had moved. From friend's couch to friend's couch. Then to a women's shelter when the couches ran out. Then to the street when the shelter ran out of beds. She had been working at a laundromat folding sheets, until the owner's son started touching her arms when he passed. She quit on a Friday. She had $12 to her name on Saturday. By Sunday morning she had 5. The flyer had been taped to a telephone pole outside the hardware store where she'd slept. Old cabin. $5. As is, Route 9. There was a phone number under it. She walked into a diner, ordered a cup of coffee for 90 cents, and used the diner phone to call. A tired voice on the other end told her the county was clearing out abandoned properties. 2 acres. No water. No power. Roof half gone. If she wanted to look at it, the man could meet her there at noon. She walked. 11 miles. Her boots were not made for 11 miles. By the time she reached Route 9, her left heel was bleeding through her sock. The man was already waiting in a county truck. He looked her up and down once and shook his head. "You sure you want to look at this, miss?" "Yes. It's been empty for years. Won't pass for habitation. You can't get a loan on it. Can't insure it. The taxes are $80 a year, which you'll owe the moment you sign. $80 I can find. $5 you can't get back if you change your mind." "I won't change my mind." He stared at her for a long second. Then he handed her a clipboard. The cabin sat at the back of a clearing choked with pine and birch and weeds taller than a grown man. It was small, maybe 400 square feet. The roof had a hole in one corner the size of a basketball. The porch sagged on the left. The windows were boarded with plywood, and one of the boards had been pried half off by some long-gone vandal. But the walls were standing. The door had a lock. The chimney was intact. And inside, when the man pulled the door open with a long, slow creak, the floorboards were solid under her feet. She walked the perimeter once. Then she walked it again. She looked at the man. "I'll take it." He laughed. Not unkindly. Just the laugh of a man who has watched a lot of bad decisions in his life and was now watching one more. "Miss, you understand this is condemned in everything but name." "I understand." She signed her name on the bottom of the form. Hannah Marie Reeves. She handed him 5 crumpled dollar bills, 3 of them taped together where they had torn. He counted them like they were 1,000,000. "All right," he said. "It's yours. God help you." Word from the county clerk's office got around the small town of Hollow Creek before sundown. By the next morning, when Hannah walked into the general store to buy a hammer, a box of nails, and a bag of rice, the woman behind the counter looked at her like she had grown a second head. "You're the one who bought Elias Whitlock's cabin. Was that his name?" "He was a crazy old hermit. Lived out there alone for 40 years. Nobody went near him. Nobody mourned him when he died." The woman rang up the hammer, the nails, and the rice. $8.40. Hannah handed her a 10 and pocketed the change. You won't last a week, the woman said. Hannah said nothing. She picked up her bag, walked out the door, and started the long walk back to Route 9. She did not know that Elias Whitlock had spent the last 20 years of his life burying something under the floor of that cabin. And she did not know that someone else in town knew exactly what was buried. That person was already making phone calls. The cabin was colder inside than out. Hannah set her duffel bag down in the middle of the single room, walked to the window, and pried the loose board the rest of the way off. Gray afternoon light poured in across a floor she could not see for the dust. She started with the sweeping. There was no broom, so she made one out of a fallen pine branch and a length of cord she'd pulled off the front porch railing. She swept for 2 hours. The dust came up in clouds so thick she had to step outside 3 times to breathe. She found a dead mouse, a coiled length of copper wire, and a single tarnished spoon. She put the spoon in her pocket. She buried the mouse. When she could see the floor, she started on the walls. There was no soap, so she used water from the rain barrel out back and a rag torn from the bottom of her own t-shirt. She scrubbed until her knuckles were raw. The wood underneath was pine. Old pine. Honey-colored where the grime came off. By the time the sun started going down, the cabin smelled like wet wood and pine sap and her own sweat. She built a fire in the iron stove in the corner. The chimney drew. The smoke went up. She almost cried when she realized it. She ate a handful of dry rice straight out of the bag because she had not yet figured out how she was going to cook it. She drank water from the rain barrel. She sat on the floor with her back against the wall and watched the light from the stove move across the boards. That was when she noticed it. One board, 3 feet from the stove, sat slightly lower than the others. Not by much, maybe 1/4 of an inch. Enough that her bootfeel had caught on the lip of the next board every time she walked past it. She had not really registered it. Now, in the firelight, she saw the way that board sat. She got on her hands and knees. The board was loose, not just settled. Loose. She put her fingernails in the seam and lifted, and the whole thing came up in her hand. Underneath, where the joists should have made a dark hollow, there was a wooden box. A wooden box that fit exactly in the space between 2 joists, as if someone had built the floor around it. Her hands started shaking. She lifted the box out. It was the size of a small suitcase. Old. Handmade. The wood was a different color than the floor, darker, almost black with age. There was no lock. Just a brass clasp, green with verdigris, that she had to pry open with the edge of the spoon she'd found earlier. Inside the box, on top of everything else, was a leather notebook. Beneath the notebook, wrapped in a piece of oilcloth, was a smaller box. Metal. Locked. She did not open the metal box. Not yet. She lifted out the notebook with both hands, carried it back to the stove, and sat down with her legs crossed. She turned to the first page. The handwriting was clean, patient. A man who had taken his time over every letter. If you are reading this, the cabin has chosen you. That was the first line. Hannah read it 3 times before she went on. My name is Elias Whitlock. I built this cabin in 1973 with my own 2 hands. I have lived in it alone for almost half a century. I am writing this in the year I have been told I have left to live, which the doctor in Asheville says is 1. I have no children. I have no wife. I have no friends in this town who care to know my name. I have one cousin, who is the reason I will not be leaving any of this to anyone by ordinary means. My cousin has spent 30 years trying to find out what I have and where I have put it. He will not find it after I am gone. The cabin will be sold for whatever the county can get for it, and whoever buys it, by accident or by need, will be the one I leave it to. I have one condition. You must have made this place into a home before you find this notebook. You must have swept the floor and washed the walls and lit a fire in the stove. The cabin will not give itself up to anyone who has not done that. If you have, then turn the page. Hannah turned the page. She read for 2 hours. She read about a man who had been left a sum of money by a grandfather he had only met twice. She read about a man who had taken that money out of every bank he could find because he did not trust banks, and who had put it into things that could not be stolen by paper. Gold coins, silver bars, United States savings bonds in his own name, fully matured. The deeds to 3 pieces of land in 2 states. And 1 piece of land she had not been expecting at all. She read until the fire burned low and her eyes burned with it. Then she closed the notebook, set it on her chest, lay down on the bare floor with her duffel bag under her head, and fell asleep with the smell of pine in her nose and a slow, heavy warmth spreading through her ribs for the first time in 9 months. She was warm. She was safe. She was, for the first time since the day her mother had died, home. The knock came at 5:43 in the morning. It was loud, and it was patient, and it was not the kind of knock a stranger lost on a back road would make. Hannah sat up. The notebook slid off her chest. She caught it before it hit the floor. She put it down slowly and stood. Her bare feet made no sound on the pine boards. She walked to the window beside the door and lifted the corner of the rag she had hung as a curtain. A black truck. New. Clean. Sitting at the foot of her driveway with its headlights still on. A man on her porch. 40-something. Long wool coat. Silver hair combed back. The kind of shoes that had no business on a road like Route 9. He knocked again. "Miss Reeves," he said through the door, in a voice that knew her name and was not surprised to find her here. "I know you're awake. My name is Carlton Whitlock. I'm here about the cabin." Hannah did not open the door. "I'm a relative of the previous owner," the man said. "His cousin. I understand you purchased this property yesterday afternoon. I'd like to make you an offer." She put her hand on the doorframe to steady herself. The man on the other side of the door was the cousin. The cousin who had spent 30 years trying to find what was hidden in this house. The cousin Elias had written about by name on page 2, in the cleanest handwriting she had ever seen. "What kind of offer?" she said. "Open the door, Miss Reeves. I'd prefer to do this face to face." "What kind of offer?" There was a pause. Then he said, $5,000. Cash. Today. You give me the deed, you take the money, and you walk away from this miserable little box of rot with 100 times what you paid for it. You will never see anyone make you a better offer in your life. Hannah closed her eyes. A day ago, $5,000 would have been the answer to every problem she had ever had. A day ago, she would have opened that door so fast the hinges would have screamed. A day ago, she did not know what was inside the metal box under the floor. Now she did. "No," she said. The pause on the other side of the door was longer this time. "Miss Reeves, I'm going to give you a moment to think about that answer." "I don't need a moment." 10,000. "No. 20. She did not answer. "Miss Reeves, I am not a man who is used to hearing the word no. I am also not a man who walks away. I will give you until noon today. At noon I will come back, and we will have a conversation that will be far less pleasant than this one. Do you understand me?" She did not answer. She heard him take a step back. She heard the porch board creak. She heard him walk down the path, slow and careful, the way he had come up. She heard the truck door open and close. She heard the engine start. She did not move until the headlights swept across her window and the truck was gone. Then she moved fast. She locked the door. She wedged a chair against it. She went to the floorboard, lifted the wooden box out, and reached for the leather notebook. The small brass key was taped to the inside of the back cover, green with the same verdigris as the clasp. She unlocked the metal box. She lifted the lid. For a long moment she did not breathe. Inside, stacked neatly, were envelopes. United States savings bonds. The dates went back 40 years. The face values went up. $5,000 bonds. $10,000 bonds. $25,000 bonds. She counted them with hands that would not stop shaking. There were 63 envelopes. Under the envelopes were the coins. Gold. Not jewelry. Coins. American eagles, dozens of them in plastic sleeves. She did not know what they were worth. She knew they were heavy. Under the coins were the deeds. 3 of them. 2 pieces of land in Tennessee. 1 piece of land in North Carolina, which the notebook had said was 420 acres of unspoiled hardwood forest, with a creek running through it, and a small house on the south end. And under the deeds was the letter. The envelope had 7 words on it, in Elias Whitlock's clean and patient handwriting. To the one who made it home. Hannah sat down on the floor with the letter in her hand. Her ears were ringing. Her chest was doing something she did not have a word for. If you've been with this story so far, take a second to hit that subscribe button. What happens in the next 10 minutes is the part that silences every person who ever laughed at her. She opened the letter. Hannah, if you are reading this letter, then you have found what I left for you, and you have done so before my cousin Carlton has found you. That second part is not certain. I am writing this with no way of knowing whether you, whoever you are, will get to these pages first, or whether he will be standing in the room with you when you read them. I am going to make it easier for you either way. Inside this box, under everything else, are 8 folders. Each folder is a copy of a document I have spent the last 15 years collecting. Bank records, forged signatures, a power of attorney form that Carlton had me sign when I was in the hospital recovering from pneumonia and could not have read it if I had wanted to. The originals of all of these documents are in a safe deposit box at the First Tennessee Bank in Knoxville. The key is in this envelope. The box is in your name now. I changed it 3 days before I died. If Carlton has come to you with money, he is going to come back with worse. He has done worse to other people. He has never been caught because the people he has done it to have never had what was in this box. Now you do. Take the folders. Take the key. Walk to the sheriff's office in Hollow Creek. Ask for Sheriff Don Briggs. Don is the one person in that town who never took a thing from Carlton, and he has been waiting for these folders for a long time. The rest of what is in this box is yours. The land in North Carolina is yours. The house on the south end of it is small, but it is sound, and the wood stove was put in last winter, and the well never runs dry. There is enough in the bonds to live on for a long time if you live carefully. The gold is for the years when paper money is not worth what it used to be. Spend it slowly. You did not know me. I did not know you. But the cabin is a strange kind of judge. It does not give itself up to people in a hurry. The fact that you are reading this means you swept the floor and washed the walls and lit the stove before you ever found the seam in the boards. That tells me what kind of person you are. That is enough. Be well. Elias Whitlock. Hannah read the letter twice. She folded it. She put it back in the envelope. She put the envelope in the inside pocket of her jacket, against her chest. She took the 8 folders out of the bottom of the metal box. She took the small brass safe deposit key. She put the bonds back. She put the gold back. She put the deeds in her jacket pocket with the letter. Then she put the wooden box back in the floor and the floorboard back over it, and the rag rug she'd shaken out the day before on top of that. She put on her boots. She put on her jacket. She picked up the 8 folders. She walked out the door. Hollow Creek was 4 miles by the back road. She walked it in an hour and 20 minutes. Her left heel had stopped bleeding sometime in the night. By the time she reached the town square, her boots felt like part of her feet. The sheriff's office was on the corner of Main and Birch. She walked in. The woman at the front desk looked up. "Help you, miss? I need to see Sheriff Don Briggs." The woman looked at the 8 folders under Hannah's arm. She looked at Hannah's face. She picked up the phone. Sheriff Briggs came out of the back 2 minutes later. He was a heavy man in his 60s with a gray mustache and eyes that did not miss anything. He looked at the folders. He looked at Hannah. He did not ask her to sit down. "Where did you get those?" he said. "Elias Whitlock's cabin." The sheriff was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Come with me." At 11:53 that morning, 3 county cruisers turned off the highway onto Route 9. At 11:58, They pulled into the gravel at the foot of Hannah's driveway and parked behind the bend, out of sight from the cabin. At 12:04, Carlton Whitlock's black truck pulled into the driveway behind 2 more vehicles. 6 men got out, none of them in long coats, all of them in work boots and gloves. One of them was carrying a crowbar. They walked up the path to the cabin. Carlton tried the door. It was locked. He nodded to the man with the crowbar. The crowbar went into the doorframe. The wood splintered. The door swung open. 6 men walked into a cabin with no one in it. They were inside for less than 30 seconds. When they came out, Sheriff Briggs and 4 deputies were standing on the path with their hands resting on their belts, the way men stand when they have all the time in the world. Carlton Whitlock stopped halfway down the porch steps. "Sheriff," he said. "Carlton, this is private property." "It is," said the sheriff, "and the owner has invited me onto it. The owner has also given me 8 folders that have your name on every page." Carlton's face went a color she had not seen on a face before. "Hannah," the sheriff said. She stepped out from behind the cruiser at the foot of the path. Carlton looked at her like she had grown out of the ground. The sheriff said, "Mr. Whitlock, you are under arrest." The arrest of Carlton Whitlock made the front page of the Hollow Creek Gazette and the 3rd page of the Knoxville paper. The articles ran for a week. Hannah's name was not in any of them. Sheriff Briggs had asked the reporters to leave that part out, and the reporters, who knew the sheriff, had done what they were asked. The folders contained enough to put Carlton in a federal courtroom for a year. The land in North Carolina was transferred into Hannah's name within a month. The bonds went into a savings account at a small bank in Asheville, where a quiet old woman behind a desk looked at the dates on the envelopes and then looked at Hannah and then went and got the bank manager. The gold she kept in a safe deposit box. She did not sell any of it. Elias had told her not to, and Elias had been right about everything else. She did not move out of the cabin right away. She lived there for the rest of that fall. She fixed the hole in the roof. She put new boards on the porch. She bought a real broom. She bought a kettle. She bought a chair. She slept in a sleeping bag on the pine floor for 2 more months, because she had grown to like the smell of the wood, and because she was not done with the cabin yet. In November, when the first snow came down through the pines, she finally drove the truck she had bought to the property in North Carolina. The road was bad. The house was small. The wood stove was where Elias had said it would be. The well never ran dry. She moved in on the 1st of December. The cabin she did not sell. She did not rent it either. She paid the $80 a year on the taxes. Every year, on the morning of the day she had first walked up to its rotting porch with a clipboard and 5 crumpled dollar bills in her hand. The roof she kept whole. The chimney she kept clean. She drove up once a season, swept the floor, washed the walls, lit a fire in the stove, and slept one night in a sleeping bag on the pine boards. She did this for the rest of her life. The woman at the general store, the one who had told Hannah she would not last a week, did not last in her own job. She was let go for reasons unrelated. The county clerk who had laughed when Hannah signed her name on the form retired the following spring and shook Hannah's hand on his way out of the office. The boys from the laundromat moved to another town. Sheriff Don Briggs retired 3 years later. Hannah was at his retirement dinner. She sat at the table with his wife and his 2 grown daughters, and she did not say much, but she laughed at his stories, and when he got up to leave he hugged her like she was one of his own. Carlton Whitlock died in federal prison in his 6th year of a 12-year sentence. Hannah did not go to the funeral. There was no funeral. She went back to the hardware store once, the one whose awning she had slept under on the night before she found the flyer. She did not tell the owner who she was. She bought a hammer she did not need, and a box of nails she did not need, and she paid for them with cash. On her way out, she stopped at the corner of the building and stood for a long minute under the awning. She put her hand on the wall. Then she walked away. She used some of what Elias had left her to set up a small fund. Not a big one, a small one. The fund paid the first year of rent for women coming out of the shelter on Tucker Avenue who had jobs but no first month and no last month and no security deposit. She ran the fund herself out of a notebook the way Elias had run his life out of a notebook. She did not name it after herself. She did not name it after Elias. She did not name it at all. She was 31 years old when she finally read the rest of Elias's journal. She had been keeping it on the windowsill of the small house in North Carolina, in the sun, where the leather smelled the way leather smells in a warm room. There were pages she had not read in the first reading. There was one page near the end she had missed entirely. The page said this: "I have lived alone for 47 years in a cabin that I built with my own hands. I have not been lonely. I have been quiet. There is a difference, and the world has forgotten it. If you are reading this, you will probably forget it too for a while. That is all right. The cabin will remind you, every season, when you come back to sweep it." Hannah closed the notebook. She put it back on the windowsill. That night she sat on the porch of the small house in North Carolina with a cup of coffee in her hands, and she watched the moon come up over the hardwoods, and she thought about a young woman scrambling after a cardboard box on a wet street, with a man in a long coat standing over her, laughing. The young woman had not cried. The young woman had not known why then. She knew why now. "Save your breath for moving," her mother had said. "You will need it. You will not always know what for. But you will need it. And one day you will be glad you saved it."